Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publicists Association's Let It Be Known. Carolyn Donham Bryant, the white woman who falsely accused black teenager Emmett Till of whistling at her, a lie that led to his lynching and inhumane murder, has died in a nursing home in Louisiana at the age of 88. And I tell you what, there are many, many people who are celebrating. We're going to have details on that. Also, Jerry, or as they say, Jerry Springer, the father of reality and smut television and former Cincinnati mayor who was busted in a prostitution ring while he was on city council in Cincinnati, has died at the age of 79. Of course, Jerry Springer revolutionized the crazy talk shows of the 90s and led to the reality shows that we see today, including the Kardashians. We'll have details about Jerry Springer, who died at the age of 79. Also, with ringing the wrong doorbell and knocking on the wrong door has gone wrong. We're going to hear how these three black men who knock on doors for a living, how they have handled knocking on doors. Also, the cost of living in several big cities are so high, you might be surprised how much an individual has to earn in a year to clear six figures in places like New York, San Francisco, Honolulu, and even Washington, D.C. We'll tell you about that. But first, we bring on the one and only Austin Cooper to discuss this morning's headlines. Austin, what's going on? It's just all muted. You all right?
Yeah, hold on 1 second. Am I still
He
on
gonna
mute?
put me on hold like we on the phone or
No,
something.
no. Am I
We
on
are live.
mute?
What in
Sorry.
the world?
Yeah, you can hear
Even
me
when
now, right?
Barrington's not here, you just, I guess, maybe that's what it is. Barrington's not here.
No, I didn't realize I was on mute. I apologize.
It's like I didn't realize I was on camera, even though the light is on. E- e-
How you doing, brother? Good to see you. Sorry about that. That
It's good to see you as always, Austin. Uh, we began this morning, Austin, of course, with Carolyn Donham Bryant, the white woman who testified that a black teenager we all know as Emmett Till had made inappropriate approaches toward her, which led to his lynching and murder in Mississippi in 1955. Well, Carolyn Bryant, with a oxygen tank on her back and the thing going up her nose, has died at the age of 88. She died while receiving hospice care in Louisiana. A death record issued yesterday in from the coroner's office noted that she died in Westlake, Louisiana, 2 nights earlier. Her false claims against Emmett Till set off a chain of events that sparked the modern civil rights movement after the teenager's mother insisted his casket remain open during the funeral, and photos of Emmett Till's battered and mutilated body appeared in Jet magazine. The world received a bird's eye view of the brutality of America's rampant racism. Um, Austin, you know, it, it's not really in any of us to celebrate a death. The and it's really it's not even a time for celebration. But when you think about what this woman did, it is something horrible. She lived with. Do you think Do you think that she had any? That she you say you got to live with something, right? And do you think it kind of bothered her at all?
I think it did. First of all, when I got the news yesterday or the day before that she had passed, I'm the son of a preacher and a teacher. And I got to admit, my first reaction was, she should have died in prison. And I feel that way 24 hours later, 48 hours later, whatever it is.
Mhm.
What she did was horrific. What her husband and brother-in-law did was horrific, and no one, with her death, it is official now. No one will ever be held accountable for the murder of a kid, of a 14-year-old child who she later recanted the story and said that he had not whistled. at her. We know they came to his uncle's house 2 days later. Led him away. His body was found at the bottom of the Tallahatchie River. 48 hours later, after, I'm sorry, 72 hours after his abduction, there was a trial on or about September 19th, of
Yep.
55. These men were found innocent.
Well, acquitted. They were not found innocent.
That's right. That's how they were acquitted. They were, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Thank you for the
An
correction.
all-white jury.
They were all white jury, and it took them an hour. And one of them was overheard joking, telling reporters afterwards, "It only took us an hour because we took one or two coke breaks." And
This
then,
was
less than
horrible.
5 months later, in January of 1956, these same men sat down with Look magazine,
Look, yep.
which paid them, I don't know if it's $4,000 each or $4,000 that they split. And they basically admitted and went into detail about the abduction and the murder. Getting back to your original question, I mean, I do think that I hope that
Mhm.
it aided her and gnawed at her for every waking moment and
Mhm.
every sleeping moment that she had until she closed her eyes for the final time. But she still justice should have been served. She should have been put in prison, and it's just unfortunate that no one would be held accountable, at least here on Earth, with the abduction and murder of young Emmett.
Yeah, you think about that time too, and even today with all of this so-called white supremacist stuff and everybody else with the different types of hates that they have. Some people, do you just think that some people have just cold hearts that nothing affects them? Because she sat in that courtroom too, back in 1955, and then she later in an unpublished memoir, she claimed that she had no idea. So she kind of, not kind of, she
It was,
admitted.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
She says she had no idea what would become of Emmett Till when she lied on him.
What does she think would become? She's lying. She was
Well,
lying
that
then,
was right.
lying now. And
1955, Mississippi.
yeah, in 1955, and exactly. And think about it. This is a mother, because she was a mother. I think she had two children, she and her husband. And she looked at across the courtroom at Mamie Till, also a mother,
Yeah, yeah,
and did not, even that wasn't enough for her to come clean. So
yeah.
horrific.
And here's the other part. So what we learned, and we reported this last year as well, is that there was an arrest warrant for her that was
Yeah,
outstanding for at least a decade or so. They never served the warrant on her. And if you remember, also what was uncovered was that police back then uh, had in so-called intentions of arresting her, but decided that, you know what, she has kids, leave her alone.
yeah, yeah. She had kids, and to hell with the fact that Mamie Till had a son, had a kid who was now deceased, because of her actions, her lies, and because of the actions of her husband and brother-in-law. The system. I mean, again, it took less than an hour to acquit him. Yet, despite that trial, and for the remainder of her life, as opposed to Carolyn Bryant, Mamie Till was a courageous civil rights activist and crusader for justice for her son, as well as others.
Well, see, and that leads to the debate we had, or the discussion. I shouldn't say debate. The discussion we had about a week ago, and I don't remember. Was it you, maybe Barrington, or someone else who was saying when we talked about Tyree Nichols and others, uh, we were saying perhaps people need to see these battered bodies today when you are victims of these types of crimes. Maybe that might change with the guns, with the other things that are going on. But what Mamie Till did, it remains the central part of what really got motivated the civil rights movement.
Yep, and exactly. I firmly believe that. And let's keep in mind it was the black press that initially published these photos and brought it forward not only for the country to see, but for the world to see. I don't know what, if any, mainstream media picked up on it. I'm sure that some did, but no, what she did was courageous. Young Emmett's death sparked what we now know is the civil rights movement. Uh, kudos to her, and I do agree to Mrs. Teal. I had the pleasure of meeting, sitting next to Mrs. Teal in New York at an NAACP luncheon, um, maybe 5 or 6 years before she died. Had a pleasant conversation with her, and as I was saying goodbye, and I gave her a kiss on the cheek, I looked her in the eye and I said, "Thank you for your sacrifice. May God bless you." And she said, "Thank you, and vote. Always
Mm.
vote, young man, and keep Emmett's legacy alive, and ensure that my son did not die in vain."
Yeah, and thank you, Michelle Madison. You're absolutely right. It was Make It Plain himself. Mark Thompson said that these things should be seen. Power 96 says of Carolyn Dunham that he calls her the original Karen and the poster child for white privilege, has kicked the bucket, made the devil sell her a space heater in hell. This is what we've been seeing a lot on social media.
Absolutely, absolutely.
He says, "I went to high school with one of JW Million's grandsons. He denounced his grandfather every day. Once we found out
Really?
who he is, yeah, that is amazing.
Wow.
Related to that, that still didn't stop the beat down. Oh gosh, he still got a beat down, huh? Power 96, y'all are vicious. Goodness grief." Um, we're gonna segue and talk about another death, but before we talk, and I have to go off script a little bit, Greer, because we're gonna talk about Jerry Springer. But before we talk about Jerry Springer, it's important to note another high-profile death that has gone under the radar, at least until last night. And speaking of Mark Thompson, Mark and I had this conversation yesterday, long conversation about it. Uh, Alton Maddox, the attorney
Oh,
from
I
New
had not heard
York,
that.
yeah, has died. He was 75 years old, apparently had dementia. Now, New Yorkers for sure, but America might remember Alton Maddox. He was one of those. He was Ben Crump before there was Ben Crump.
Exactly, exactly.
But he also got involved at the request and behest of Al Sharpton. He and another attorney named C. Vernon Mason
Mhm.
in the Tawana Brawley case back in the 80s. He, of course, a grand jury found that Tawana's story was a hoax, and Maddox and Mason and Sharpton were each sued. Maddox and Mason lost their law license, and Sharpton went on to make millions of dollars doing whatever Sharpton does. And Sharpton, I saw a quote from Sharpton about Maddox, and he said that they hadn't spoken in over 20 years. Right, of course they hadn't spoken in over 20 years, and that they started to have different and I'm paraphrasing now, but I forget the word Sharpton used, viewpoints pretty much. Naturally, they had different viewpoints. Sharpton left these guys holding the bag is the bottom line. He left them holding the bag. And so Maddox continued to fight, although he did not have a law license. He continued to advise people, to counsel corporations on racism, and also fight inequalities the best way he could, up until about 2017, when he began to
Suffer health issues.
experience
Yeah,
his
yeah.
demise, if you will. But Alton Maddox, the fiery African American lawyer from New York, has died. I remember Alton Maddox on a better note, a much better note. He defended, or he brought to light, we should say, he helped put pressure on New York's, I believe it's the Queens District Attorney, in the case of the Howard Beach situation, where these black men were chased with bats and pipes and beaten in Howard Beach. One of them Can't call his name right now. Maybe David Youngblood can help me
Highway
out
trying
there.
to get away. Yeah.
Trying to get away across the Belt Parkway, was struck and killed by a car. It was Alton Maddox who pushed for these men to be charged with murder, to be charged anyway. And New York was not going to do it. But even at the time, of all people, the then mayor Ed Koch called it one of the most horrific crimes he had seen. And so, and that was at the pushing of Alton Maddox. So Alton
Mhm.
Maddox has died. We certainly want to remember Alton Maddox, regardless of how anybody else might remember him. There was a lot of good in Alton. He did a lot of good, put it that way.
Yeah, and I was living in New York at the time and working for Charlie Rangel, uh, congressman from Harlem. So certainly had dealings with all three men. But I'm very, very sorry to hear about Attorney Maddox passing. And he remained, despite he and C. Vernon Mason, despite losing their law licenses and the you know reputations, the damage to the reputations that they both incurred
Yep.
because of the Tuana Brawley fiasco, and that's what it was, a fiasco.
Yeah.
They both remained committed to civil rights and human rights.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, Austin, and Mark and I was talking about this last night. I really still have. I'm not convinced that that situation with Toronto Brawley was a complete hoax. I'm just not convinced. She has never, to my knowledge, she's never recanted her story. They sued her. I know that as well. She went on to live in Virginia with I believe it was the New York Post who tracked her down. She was used a pseudonym she was living under, and they kind of exposed her there in Virginia, where she could be served with lawsuit papers. Is the last I heard of her, but I'm not totally convinced that that story was a hoax. If you remember, uh, individuals like Mike Tyson, Bill Cosby, I believe even Harry Belafonte had stepped in to help her get an education, pay for an education, and different things of that nature. But we talked a little bit about that yesterday, Mark and I, and also it led us to segue into the Atlanta child murders case, which I just
That's
one
right.
day hope that somebody says enough is enough with that, and let's really
Find out what happened here.
find out what happened to these kids. And I know that was what, 40 years ago, but look, uh justice needs to
40 yeah,
justice needs to
40,
be served.
exactly,
Wayne
exactly.
Williams, in my view, and in a lot of people's view, uh is not responsible for those deaths.
Yeah, and these
He's
kids, these young boys in Atlanta have been gone 40 years, and their families are still suffering. The same way Emmett Till's family is still suffering. So justice, to your point, does indeed need to be served in a whole host of cases like these.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Jerry Springer has died, the one-time mayor and news anchor whose namesake TV show featured a three-ring circus of dysfunctional guests willing to bear all, sometimes literally, as they brawled and hurled obscenities before a raucous audience. He died at the age of 79 yesterday. The Jerry Springer Show was a ratings powerhouse and a
Right.
U.S. cultural pariah, synonymous with lurid drama, known for chair throwing and bleep filled arguments. Austin, the daytime talk show, was a favorite American guilty pleasure over its 27-year run. At one point, even topping Oprah Winfrey show.
Right. That's right. Yeah, I remember. I grew up in Cleveland, so I remember hearing of Councilman Jerry Springer, uh, and then Mayor Jerry Springer. And one of the things I admired that he did as a kid was lowering the voting age in Ohio from, I believe, 20 or 21 to 18. And I remember being very excited, and hearing that and thinking that he was progressive. And then the next thing I hear about Jerry Springer is when he has this crazy, bizarre, insulting to the American intelligence daily television show that I have to be transparent here. I sometimes watched.
He
I'm not
lured you
here to
in.
criticize the man and say that I did not watch. I remember telling some, fraternity brothers at the time, if I ever get a letter in the mail and Jerry Springer via anybody I know, wife, ex-wife, sister, mama, anybody wants me to appear on Jerry Springer, I'm not going because it can't be good. It can't be good.
Wait,
No,
let me see which episode he could have had you on. So some of the last episodes had such titles as "Stripper Sex Turned Me Straight," "Stop Pimping My Twin Sister," and "Hooking Up with My Therapist."
yeah, and the crazy thing was Jerry would bring on these people. He would totally, I mean, families that were already dysfunctional.
Yes,
When
and exploit them.
when that show went off the air, your family that you thought was dysfunctional before you went live was even more dysfunctional once that red light came up and the show was over. Yet at the end of the show, Jerry would look around at the mess that he had created. Knocked over chairs, blood on
Oh,
the floor, and I forgot what his closing quote was, but it was basically, love yourselves and love your family. How can we do that after what you've just done to us?
he destroyed that, right?
Yeah, I would turn to this show, and if I was home, it used to come on 11 o'clock or 11:30 a.m. It was mid morning show, and I'd be feeling down, and I would say, hell, I know after I watch this show, this is gonna make me feel a little better. And I would turn on this show, and for all of my education and all of my professional
It went
experience,
out the window.
I would say, why did these women agree to be on the show? I mean, you be
Mm.
sitting there talking to Jerry, and you think your marriage is happy. How long you been with your wife? Oh, we've been happily married for 20 years. Happily married? Yeah, happily married. You sure about that? Yeah, I talk to my wife every day. We're very, she loves me. I love her. Okay, well, let me bring out someone who's having an affair with her. And you're like, what in God's name is going on here?
Believe it or not, well, some of the forgotten facts about Jerry Springer, he entered politics as an aide in the Robert F. Kennedy's
That's right. The
presidential
campaign. That's right.
campaign in
Presidential
1968.
campaign.
Yeah. Um, he also, of course, he was on the city council in Cincinnati. Then he had to quit city council because he paid a prostitute with a check. He, and so, but when he came back, he won, and so that was, I believe, 75, and then 77. He was
Mhm.
reelected to city council and said, "Look, yes, I paid with a check, but my credit is good."
Yep. Many of these people who I'm convinced who watched his show religiously, and I didn't watch his show religiously, but many of the people who I shouldn't say watched the show, who appeared on the show, I'm convinced a good number of them are Trump supporters today. I mean, Jerry Springer's show did a lot to, in my opinion, to dummy down
Oh
America
gosh.
and to glorify violence, to glorify the disruption
The
of the home.
beginning of reality
Many of these
TV.
issues that he was dealing with on the show when nobody else's business.
Yeah, it really was. David Youngblood says, "I'm
What did
not
David
appearing
say?
on Jerry." He said, Michelle Madison says she wasn't really a Jerry's fan. In my opinion, she says he capitalized on people's real life drama and made a mockery of it,
Thank you.
particularly black people. And Power 96 said the trailer park will never be the same. Rest in peace. Yeah. Yes, Jerry Springer is dead at 79. Knocking on doors, Austin, has become such a perilous thing in America. Three black men who knock on doors for a living, well, they share the precautions that they take to stay safe. Let's take a look.
This can be interesting.
A door knock gone terribly wrong. Tonight, new details in the case of a man accused of shooting a 16-year-old who mistakenly rang his doorbell.
Let's just get right into this. Chad, right off the bat, tell me how big of a part of your job actually is knocking on people's doors.
If I was to put it in a percentage wise, I would say about between 20 and 30%. A lot of realtors choose not to do it because of situations. And as soon as I knock on the door, I always step off the porch or try to give at least 6 feet between the doorstep and myself.
No, it's interesting to hear you do that. We do the exact same thing. And really the key for me is I want to be able to look to my left and look to my right and see that I have space to potentially jump out of the way if somebody comes out with a gun.
I try to be as loud as I can. Like, hey, delivery, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, delivery, from the bottom of the stairs. Like, I try to attract attention to myself in a way that's disarming in my mind.
Yeah, you're just trying to let them know that if you see someone walking up in the next few seconds,
I come in peace. I'm a bike messenger in San Francisco. I was accosted by somebody in a nice neighborhood.
I want identification. Who are you?
Who the f are you? Why do you think that I have to answer your questions? Don't think I don't know why you came over here and stopped me. Because you think I belong in another neighborhood, right?
At first, he was going to call the cops because he thought I was stealing packages. And then after I pressed him back a little bit, he said that I was being threatening and that I was scaring him.
A lot of these people say they do feel unsafe and they do feel like somebody is a. But if you perceive somebody as a threat, why not just call the police? Why not let them? I mean, that's what we paid them for, right?
If I don't know too much about the neighborhood, I probably won't go there and introduce myself. I have the luxury of picking and choosing. Unfortunately, these gentlemen do not.
Ontario, all of this makes me think of a little bit of your situation. I know you can't talk too much about it, but you've been actually shot at on the job.
Yes, sir.
I always feel like my press ID, I feel like it helps me. It makes people calm down. They ask, who are you? What are you doing? I can say, oh, I'm with CNN. Do you feel like your uniform protected you in some cases?
No, sir, because I had my uniform on that night, like full uniform, big jacket, big words, everything.
I looked up porch shooting because I forgot the kid's name for a second. It wasn't the first time. How do you teach your kid, don't make a mistake, don't knock on the door, don't deliver a package, don't look the way you look? What are you supposed to tell them?
We've gotten to a place where it's shoot first and ask questions later. That's just a terrible place that we're headed in.
Wow. And so the simple act of knocking on the door, even if it's the right door, in their case, the right door, they're delivering packages.
We have the challenges of as Black Americans of driving while Black, that's stressful. Walking while Black, that's stressful. Going to work as Blacks, that's stressful. And now, pulling into the wrong driveway as Black, another level of stress. Ringing the doorbell rightly or by mistake is another level of stress. I mean, this is today's society.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's going to. I just think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah. David Youngblood says knocking on doors has always been a perilous adventure for us, folks. You got to be extremely careful, and not to say that everybody else haven't been careful, right? You make a mistake. Yeah, last time I checked, there's not a perfect person walking around this earth.
I mean, who amongst us has not knocked on the on the wrong door, or you pull into a driveway with no intention of ringing the doorbell, just to reverse and go in the opposite direction? Who amongst us has not been on the phone or just not paying attention when you come out of a Target or the grocery store and you see a car that's identical to yours. And you know, most times when I go into a store, I have no idea where I parked. I mean, I'm one of those that's standing there, you know, looking around. Where the hell did I park my car? But I mean, I have actually on more than one occasion pulled on the handle or stood there with my lock key trying to unlock it and wondering, thinking something's wrong with my battery. And then I step back, oh, this is not my car. But a simple action like that, an honest mistake, can get you shot, paralyzed, and even killed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're hearing about this over the last 2 or 3 weeks. But how many other cases are there that we have
Yep.
not heard about? I mean, this cannot be a new phenomenon where people are just saying, you know what, someone knocks on my door, I'm gonna blast them.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, as much as it certainly does happen more often to African Americans and people of color, it's happening to white folks too. It's
Right?
happening. It's just this culture in America that is, and this is certainly not opinion. This is fact that it's happening to everyone. We just saw just what, a week ago or so the young white girl. I think she's 20 years old, pulled into the wrong driveway and she got killed.
Yep. Yep.
So it's happening to everyone.
And let's remember what our dear brother Mark said on the show last week. You know, this is happening, and I think he was so on point because you know we have so many weapons in society that folks are looking for a reason to use them,
Yep.
whether it makes sense or not.
Yeah, and with all these
Anything that triggers you,
Yep.
well, I know how to handle this. I'll just go and get my gun.
Yeah, with all these I feel threatened, stand your ground laws,
Yep.
uh
Yep.
folks feel empowered now that they can just use their weapons with impunity. There will not be any consequences whatsoever. And in a lot of cases there are no consequences. So we just everyone has to be careful. Us, Austin, I know we only got about 5 minutes left. We can certainly, that's a topic that we will revisit, I'm sure. But the cost of living in 3 U.S. cities, New York, San Francisco, and Honolulu, Hawaii, individuals need to earn a salary of at least $340,000 to take home $100,000 after taxes and cost of living adjustments. The nation's capital also isn't far behind. Residents in D.C. need to earn at least $245,000 to pocket 6 figures, according to an analysis by Smart Asset, a consumer-focused financial information provider. They adjusted the $100,000 for local living costs in 76 of the largest U.S. cities. It then used its paycheck calculator, which factored in federal, state, and local taxes for a single taxpayer who earned a yearly salary. The calculations factored in a worker with no additional withholdings. But it comes out, goodness grief, the cost of living in Washington, in fact, is a staggering the adjustment 53.4% is one of many cities with the high cost of living. New York has a cost of living that is 44% higher than the national average. For instance, real estate prices Austin increasingly going up with the interest rate going up along with the prices. You got to earn $345,000 in New York if you want to clear $100,000. Goodness, it's like,
Yeah.
how do you get by?
Yeah, and how many individuals are making that kind of money, making that kind of income. I lived in New York City for a number of years. I've lived in Manhattan. I have lived in Brooklyn, in Flatbush, and 1 or 2 other areas. Wanted to live in Manhattan, couldn't afford to live in Manhattan. I remember.
The median rent right now in Manhattan is
What?
It's about $4,000 a month. The median rent.
I remember the early 1990s subletting a studio apartment in Chelsea, West 26th between 7th and 8th.
Oh, nice.
And I was paying my landlord, who I worked with, was giving me a break, $600 a month. And I remember my mother coming to visit me once, and you open the door, walk into there's the living room, the kitchen, and the bedroom and the bathroom, and that's it. And she walked straight in and said, "Where's your living room?" I said, "Mom, you haven't even taken your coat off. Don't start." The living room is back there.
Look what Power 96 says. Y'all up north folks are rich. The average southerner couldn't survive a month with those prices.
Exactly.
And let me tell you something. I don't know how we do it. How do we do it? You gotta find a way to or make a way, they say, right? Goodness grief. San Francisco, the cost of living is 62% higher than the national average. And it's a beautiful city.
Yeah, beautiful city. I mean, I love Manhattan. And then you got to deal with the property taxes, and even if you are able to purchase, you have to. I mean, the property taxes. When I lived in New Jersey, I still have a home that I'm renting out in North Brunswick, New Jersey, which is, Stacy, is central, right up by Rutgers.
Yeah.
And property taxes are 10,000. No, I think it's 11, almost 12,000 a year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Almost 12,000 a year.
Yeah, Jersey, the property taxes will kill you. Even you pay your mortgage off, and you still get you pay over $1,000 a month anyway for property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a no-win proposition. And for those who call Hawaii paradise, well, paradise costs a whole lot. Waikiki Beach, the cost of living there is 86% above the national average.
That's incredible.
6% above average.
Well, I guess I will only be visiting Hawaii for the first time.
But they also have instituted in Hawaii a visitor's tax. So now you got to pay to go to Hawaii on top of whatever other costs associated with traveling and hotel, et cetera, et cetera. So you know what? I give up. It's enough. It's enough. We got to do our own. We got to be like Oprah and get our own island.
Exactly. Let me. I want to visit the Stacey Brown Island.
Well, you know what? That island has yet to be founded, but when I find it,
are you going to invite Barrington?
That we're going to have to figure it out. We'll figure that out. We don't need anybody burning stuff down on my island. We'll figure that one out, Austin. You're trying to trap me here. I said you can get an invite. Now you want to bring a guest.
Don't push it.
I thought somebody else would be your guest. We won't say who, but
oh no, we won't. Time to go.
Time to go. Look, everybody, thanks so much for watching. Thank you, Austin Cooper, as always. Check out Austin's column in the Washington Informer on his trip, his recent trip to Africa. He's going back to Africa, but on his recent trip, I got to check out his column there. Go to WashingtonInformer.com and check out Austin Cooper's experience, latest experience in Africa. It's been many times, but this one, you got to read about it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Absolutely.